Hello, Professor. It's me, Jessica Powell, and today I will be discussing the topic of the human papillomavirus, other known as HPV. I'm looking to inform you of our patient's diagnosis and symptoms in hopes to teach you about these types of viruses and how they work and function. Let's meet our patient. This is Renee Ross. She is a 29-year-old woman living with her boyfriend in Philadelphia. She lives a pretty healthy lifestyle, always exercising and eating right. Renee is at a routine checkup with her doctor, getting a pap smear. A week later, when she received her results, they came back abnormal, so she returned for a follow-up and had a colposcopy done. Unfortunately, Renee learned that she had tested positive for HPV, and to be more specific, she tested positive for the types 16 and 18. Which are known to be a strand that is highly linked to cervical cancer. After hearing her diagnosis, Renee kept wondering when and how she could have gotten HPV. She thought back through her past relationships and checkups, confused and concerned. So at her next doctor's visit, she asked her doctors these questions that have been on her mind. Her doctor explained that HPV is incredibly common and often shows no symptoms for years. It can even stay hidden in the body and still be passed on even when using protection. Because of this, it's almost impossible to know exactly when or how someone got it, which is why regular screenings are so important. What is a virus? First, let's dive into what makes a virus a virus. Viruses are little tiny particles that are extremely infectious. They are not considered living organisms because they cannot survive or reproduce on their own. They need a host to survive and reproduce. They are little infectious parasites, and they are known as obligate intercellular parasites. As for a virus's structure, for the most part, there are two main parts. One being the protein shell, also known as the capsid. This protects the genetic material inside the virus. Second, we have the core of the virus, which is made up of either DNA or RNA. This is where the virus has its instructions for reproduction. But sometimes viruses can also have an outer envelope. And this is made from the cell's membrane of the host that they invade. Crazy, right? Because of this, it helps viruses be able to blend in and enter other cells more easily. Kind of like they're going in under disguise, which is pretty creepy. They're like little spies. Viruses can come in all different shapes and sizes, kind of like snowflakes. Here are some examples of the most common shapes you'll see that I took from the article Intro to Viruses. I did try to practice these, but I may butcher them. Bear with me. The Esodrel virus has a round 20-sided structure, kind of like a soccer ball. This is the virus that you see on the left. And in the middle, we have the filamentous virus. This is a long rod shape. It's almost kind of like a noodle. And finally, on our far right, we have the creepy looking one, which is the head-tail virus. Looks like a lunar ladder. It's called the bacteriophage. And it attacks bacteria by injecting its DNA through the tail into the host, which is really creepy. Also kind of reminds me of, I don't know, I forgot the word. When you get a bite from a mosquito. That's what I'm looking for. The shapes of this virus actually play an important part in helping the virus be able to invade their hosts. Kind of scary. How are viruses different from bacteria? Well, now that we know what viruses are, let's find out what makes them different from bacteria. Viruses and bacteria might be both microscopic, but they are very different. In the image I have, you see a large golden part at the bottom. This is actually the bacterial cell. But the part above it, that is a bluish green, that looks like a tall thing with spider-like legs sitting on top? Well, that is the virus. This virus in particular is called the bacteriophage, and in this image you can see it infecting the bacterial cell with its tail. Viruses are much smaller than bacteria, and they cannot live on their own. They do not have cells, and they do not reproduce unless they are infecting a living host. In this image, we see the virus injecting its genetic material into a bacteria so it can take over. Dun, dun, dun! Now bacteria, on the other hand, they are living single-celled organisms. They have their own structures inside, like ribosis and DNA. And they can reproduce on their own by dividing. So the biggest differences that we see here in bacteria and viruses are that bacteria is alive and self-sufficient, while viruses, on the other hand, are not alive and can only reproduce by hijacking onto cells, which isn't very nice of them. What is the structure of an HPV virus? Okay, let's get back to our patient and their type of virus by taking a closer look at the structure of the human papillomavirus, otherwise known as HPV. On the left-hand side, we see the HPV virus. This type of virus is a small, non-enveloped one with the virus shape of an isosceles, which means that this virus has 20 sides to it. Now, the outer shell of this virus is called the capsid and made up of two proteins labeled L1 and L2 in our diagram. The L1 protein makes up the majority of the capsid, and it helps form the virus's outer shell. Now, the L2 plays a smaller but still important role. It is a less visible capsid protein, and it helps stabilize the virus's structure. Inside the capsid is the virus's genetic material, which in this case is a double-stranded DNA. That DNA is wrapped around proteins called histones, similar to how our own DNA is packaged. This compact structure helps the virus survive in the environment and makes it easier to infect the human cell. It's this DNA that carries the instructions for making more viruses once it enters the body. The image on the right is from our book, and it's from chapter 10. It shows a similar virus structure, which is the Adam virus, which also has a protein coat and a DNA inside. This helps us see how viruses like HPV are built to protect their genetic material and infect host cells. How HP is transmitted. So the big question that is on all of our minds is, how is HPV transmitted? HPV is mainly spread through skin-to-skin contact, more specifically during sexual activity. Examples include skin-to-skin contact in the genital area, oral or anal, even sharing sex toys. It enters through the tiny cuts or lesions in the skin or mucous membranes, as you see in our diagram.